You ever have one of those days where the world feels so still, it's almost like it's holding its breath? That was me, sitting by the small bay window of my one-bedroom apartment in Ashland, Oregon, watching the yellow leaves tumble down the street. I had my pill bottle in my hands, heart medication, and I was counting. Again, 6 pills left. 6 days until my chest would start that awful, squeezing ache. 6 days to figure out whether I'd eat or breathe. Then a knock. Sharp, quick, and completely unexpected. I hobbled to the door, thinking it might be the delivery guy bringing my half-price groceries. But when I peeked through the peephole, my heart did a little flip, and not the bad kind. It was Carter, my grandson, my pride and joy. I hadn't seen him in nearly 8 months, not since his last whirlwind trip before another round of business meetings whisked him away to the coasts. When I opened the door, he swept me into one of those warm, strong hugs only Carter could give. He smelled like expensive cologne in cold autumn air, his tailored suit crisp and perfect. He smiled that easy grin I remembered from when he was a lanky teenager fixing my old desktop computer for the 100th time. I was in Medford for a client lunch, he said, stepping inside, and thought I'd stop by to see my favorite grandma. We chatted for a minute, but then his eyes landed on my kitchen counter, pill bottles neatly lined up, an envelope marked final notice just barely tucked under a notepad. His brow furrowed. Grandma, the $9,000 I've been sending every month, it's helping, right? Covering the bills, your medicine, groceries. I blinked. The words didn't register at first. The what? The money, he said, slower this time. I've been sending it to Vanessa for 2 years now for your care. She told me you'd be too proud to take it directly from me. I felt the blood drain from my face. For 2 years, I'd been living like this, rationing medicine, wearing extra sweaters because I couldn't afford the heat, and he thought I was getting help? Carter, my voice was barely a whisper. I haven't seen a penny. It was like watching glass crack. His confident smile collapsed into something I'd never seen before. Pale, cold realization. He sank into my worn armchair without another word. The room went silent except for the hum of my old refrigerator. Somewhere deep down, I already knew who was behind it. And by the way Carter's jaw tightened, so did he. Grandma, he said finally, voice low and hard, we need to talk about Vanessa. And just like that, the quiet autumn afternoon wasn't quiet anymore. I wish I could tell you that Carter's words didn't land like a stone in my stomach, but they did. Vanessa Reed, his stepmother, my late son's second wife, had always been polite, sweet, even, in that careful way people are when they want you to like them, but not enough to truly let you in. She called me every few weeks, sent store-bought cookies at Christmas, and always asked about my health with a voice dripping concern. I never once suspected her of being anything more than distant family. But as Carter sat there, elbows on his knees, I could see his mind putting the pieces together. For 2 years, he said, I've been sending her money. I wanted to make sure you never had to worry about a thing. She told me she was paying your medical bills, keeping your fridge stocked. She even sent me pictures. Your kitchen with groceries, your pill bottles organized, you wearing a new cardigan. I thought you were comfortable, safe. I swallowed hard. Those groceries? I never saw them. The cardigan? That was from Goodwill. And my fridge hasn't been stocked since, well, I can't remember when. Carter's blue eyes darkened, the way the sky looks right before a storm. She lied to both of us. It hit me then, in slow, sickening waves. Every time Vanessa said Carter was too busy to visit. Every time she sighed about how expensive everything is when I mentioned my unpaid bills. Every time she patted my hand, promising to manage things so I wouldn't have to stress. She'd been planting this web for years, and I'd walked right into it. Carter leaned back, his jaw flexing. Grandma, do you understand what this means? I've sent her over $200,000 in the past 2 years. The number made my chest tighten. Not because of what it could have bought me, but because of what it meant. Carter believed he was taking care of me all this time, and instead, he'd been financing what? Her vacations, her shopping sprees, the latest remodel on her picture-perfect home. I wanted to tell him to calm down, to think this through. But then I remembered last winter, the freezing nights I slept in my coat, the meals of crackers and tea, the sharp pain in my chest when I skipped my medication to make it last longer. No, This wasn't something to calm down about. Carter looked straight at me, his voice steady but charged with a quiet fury. I'm going to find out exactly where that money went. And when I do, she's going to regret ever thinking she could get away with this. I didn't recognize the look in his eyes. Part heartbreak, part rage, part unshakable determination. It was the look of someone who just discovered betrayal in his own family and was already calculating the payback. In that moment, we weren't just grandmother and grandson. We were two people who'd been lied to by the same person. And we were about to find out just how deep those lies went. The next morning, Carter showed up at my apartment with a laptop bag slung over his shoulder and the kind of energy that made the air feel sharper. He didn't even bother with coffee, just cleared my kitchen table with one sweep of his arm and opened his computer. "Grandma," he said, tapping the keyboard, "you're not going to believe what I found last night." He turned the screen toward me. At the top was a sleek, professional-looking website, Silver Horizon Senior Care Services. There were photos of smiling nurses helping gray-haired clients in cozy, well-lit rooms. Testimonials from families praising the care their loved ones had received. A mission statement about dignity, compassion, and personalized support. "Looks legit, right?" Carter said, "Except it's all fake." I frowned. "Fake? How do you know?" "Because I built my first company in web design," he replied. "These stock images are from a free photo bank. Half the testimonials are copied from other websites. And the company's business address? It's Vanessa's P.O. box." My stomach turned. So she invented an entire business. "Not just a business," Carter said, flipping to another tab. "Invoices, service reports, medical records, all in the name of Silver Horizons. Every time I sent money, she'd send me proof it was being spent on you. In-home nurse visits, physical therapy, grocery deliveries. She even listed doctors you've never seen." I shook my head slowly. "And you believed her because it looked official." He gave me a pained half-smile. "She didn't just make it look official, Grandma. She made it look personal. She sent me pictures of your living room after she tidied it, of your medicine bottles, neatly arranged, of you wearing a sweater she claimed she bought to keep you warm. She was building a story, one where she was the hero taking care of you, and I was the proud grandson funding it." I thought back to all those times Vanessa whipped out her phone during visits. I'd assumed she was just being sentimental, documenting family moments. Now I saw it for what it was, props for her theater of lies. "And there's more," Carter said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "She set up a separate bank account, labeled Evelyn Care Fund. That's where all my transfers went. But 2-3 days later, the money moved. Credit card payments, jewelry stores, luxury boutiques, even a week-long stay at a Napa Valley resort. I stared at the numbers, each line item a gut punch. That was my heating bill, my medication, my groceries, my life. She was living well," Carter said flatly, "off the image of your suffering." A cold, steady anger started to burn in my chest. "So what now?" He closed the laptop, his jaw set. "Now we dig deeper. This is bigger than theft. This is a con, and we're going to pull every single thread until the whole thing unravels." In that moment, I realized something. Vanessa hadn't just stolen money. She built an entire fake reality, and both Carter and I had been living inside it without even knowing. Not anymore. The first real crack in my heart that week didn't come from the money. It came from realizing just how alone Vanessa had made me. Carter was at my kitchen table again, this time with a folder so thick it barely closed. Inside were emails, text messages, and even scanned letters. Not from Vanessa to me, but from Vanessa to everyone else in my life. "Grandma," he said, sliding the first printout toward me, "do you remember when your neighbor, Claire Bennett, stopped inviting you to her annual summer cookout?" I thought for a moment. I figured she got busy. Or maybe I'd said something wrong. Carter shook his head. "Vanessa emailed her, saying you've been having episodes, and that big gatherings made you anxious. She told Claire it was best not to overwhelm you." He handed me another page, an email exchange with my oldest friend, Margaret from Denver. I hadn't heard from Margaret in over a year. Turns out she tried to send me a birthday package, but it was returned with a note. Recipient no longer at this address. Vanessa told her I'd moved into a care home and wasn't up for visitors. My throat tightened. She made it sound like I didn't want anyone around. Carter's face darkened. She cut you off, Grandma. On purpose. And she didn't stop at friends. He flipped to a series of text messages between Vanessa and my cousin Hank in Minnesota. Vanessa told him I was becoming paranoid, that I'd accused her of stealing, a complete fabrication, and that I'd refused to take his calls because they confused me. I sat back in my chair, numb. All those missed connections, the lonely holidays, the calls that stopped coming. I'd blamed myself. My age. My health. The changing times. But it wasn't any of that. It was Vanessa, systematically dismantling my relationships one by one. Why? I whispered. Why would she do that? Carter's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. Isolation makes control easier. If no one else talks to you, she controls the narrative. She can tell me you're fine, or she can tell you I don't care. And we both believe it, because there's no one left to say otherwise. The room felt smaller somehow. I thought about the times Vanessa came over and clucked her tongue at my messy kitchen, or shook her head over the stack of unpaid bills. She'd made me feel helpless, like she was the only bridge between me and the outside world. And the cruelest part, I'd been grateful for her. Carter put his hand over mine. You're not alone anymore, Grandma. She can't hide you from me now. I nodded, but inside, my anger was hardening into something sharp. Vanessa had taken my money, my dignity, and now I knew she'd stolen my connections to the people I loved. And if she thought she could keep me boxed in forever, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. By the end of that week, I thought I'd heard every ugly detail there was to know. I was wrong. Carter came over on Friday with a different kind of look in his eyes. One that told me this conversation wasn't going to be about bank statements or intercepted letters. He sat down without his usual hello, set a thin stack of legal papers on the table, and slid them toward me. Grandma, he said quietly, Vanessa's not just stealing. She's trying to take you away from yourself. I frowned. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. She's been building a case to have you declared legally incompetent. Guardianship. It would give her full control over your finances, medical care, even where you live. The words felt heavy in the air, like they'd sucked all the oxygen out of the room. I looked down at the papers. They were petitions, medical summaries, and a typed report from Silver Horizons, the fake company we'd already exposed, claiming I was showing signs of advanced cognitive decline. She's been meeting with an attorney, Carter continued. I traced her calls. She's also scheduled tours at 2 different memory care facilities. One of them has your name already penciled in for a room. My hands curled into fists without me realizing. She wants to put me in a home. Carter nodded grimly. And once you're there, Grandma, you'd have no access to your own bank account, no ability to challenge her legally. She could sell your apartment, liquidate any assets, and keep every dime. And if anyone asked why you weren't living independently, she'd show them the proof she's been collecting. My mind flashed through the last 2 years. All the time she made comments about my forgetfulness, the way she'd correct me in front of others, the concerned looks she'd give like she was silently warning people not to take my words too seriously. She's been setting this up for years, I said slowly, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. And she's close, Carter added. If I hadn't come over that day, she might have pulled it off before either of us realized what was happening. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It was one thing to steal my money. It was another to take my relationships. But this was the final play. She wasn't just after my resources. She was after my autonomy, my ability to make my own choices. My life. Carter reached across the table, his voice firm. We can stop her, but we need to be smart. No yelling. No confrontations yet. She needs to believe she's still in control. A slow, deliberate calm settled over me, the way still water hides a dangerous current. Then we'll give her exactly what she wants to see, I said. I didn't know it then, but this was the moment my role shifted. I was no longer just the victim in Vanessa's story. I was about to become the very thing she feared most, a problem she couldn't manipulate. Once Carter laid out the plan, I realized it was going to take every ounce of patience I had. We couldn't just expose Vanessa in a single blow. She was too careful, too practiced at spinning her lies. If we wanted her to fall, we had to let her walk herself right off the cliff. That started with me. For the first time in my life, I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't, a forgetful, slightly confused old woman who couldn't quite keep track of her thoughts. And as much as I hated to admit it, the act came disturbingly easy. When Vanessa came over that Monday, I let her catch me searching for my purse in the refrigerator. I asked her the same question about the weather 3 times in 15 minutes. And when she mentioned Carter, I squinted like I was trying to remember who that was. "Oh, Carter," I finally said, snapping my fingers. "Isn't he the one who fixes cars?" Her eyes lit up. I'd never seen her so satisfied. She pulled out her phone, muttering softly into a voice memo. "Evelyn seems much more disoriented today. Repeating questions. Confused about family members." She thought she was documenting my decline. What she didn't know was that Carter was recording her documenting me. Phase 2 of our plan was all his. Over the next week, he started texting her for more details about my care, specific medications, doctors' names, equipment she'd purchased. Vanessa responded with the confidence of a woman who'd never been challenged. "The cardiologist wants to up her beta blockers again. We ordered a new walker with stability grips. It should arrive Friday. She's been having episodes of confusion in the evenings, so I'm tracking her blood pressure nightly. All lies, every single one, and each message was safely saved in a folder labeled evidence." Meanwhile, I was working on phase 3, rebuilding my connections. I called Claire Bennett, my neighbor, under the pretense of asking if her hydrangeas were blooming yet. She hesitated at first, then admitted she'd been told I was too anxious for social gatherings. I told her the truth. She cried. Then I called Margaret in Denver. She told me about the birthday package she tried to send, the one that was returned with "no longer at this address" stamped on the box. She believed Vanessa when she said I'd moved to a care home. Now she was furious. Every conversation gave me another piece of proof, another ally. And each time I hung up the phone, I felt stronger. By the end of the second week, Carter's evidence folder was bursting. Forged invoices, fake medical updates, screenshots of her texts, and the beginnings of a witness list made up of all the people she'd lied to. Vanessa still thought she was in control. She still believed I was sliding into helplessness, that Carter was growing more dependent on her updates. She had no idea that the two of us were patiently setting the stage for the one performance she'd never be able to talk her way out of. Vanessa showed up to Carter's office 15 minutes early. From my seat in the reception area, I could see her in the elevator reflection, smoothing her blazer, checking her lipstick, her leather portfolio tucked under one arm like it contained the crown jewels. She thought today was the day she'd finalize my move into a memory care facility. She had no clue she was walking into her own undoing. Carter greeted her with the polite stiffness of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Vanessa, thanks for coming. I thought it'd be good for Grandma to be part of this conversation." She froze when I stepped out from the corner. Just for a second, her eyes widened, her smile faltered, but then she recovered, layering on that saccharine voice. "Evelyn, honey, are you sure you're up for such a long meeting?" I smiled back, steady. "Sharp as a tack today, dear." Inside the glass-walled conference room, Carter spread out a neat line of documents across the polished table. "Let's start with the financials. These show every payment I've made over the last 2 years. $216,000 total, all to accounts you control, supposedly for Grandma's care." Vanessa kept her chin high, and as you can see, every penny went to her needs. Medical bills, home safety upgrades. "Interesting," Carter cut in, sliding forward a different stack. "These are her actual medical records from her doctors. No specialist visits in the last year. No new prescriptions. And according to her primary care physician, all communications have been filtered through you, which prevented proper treatment." Her face tightened. "There must be some mistake." "That's what I thought," I said, pulling from my own bag the printed emails between her and the fictitious Marcus Chen. "Except you made up an entire consulting company. You even created a website and testimonials. None of it exists outside of your laptop." Her gaze flicked between us, calculating. I was trying to help. By intercepting every call and letter from her friends and family? Carter's voice was sharper now. He slid forward the phone logs, the return packages, the emails telling people I was too fragile for visits. Vanessa's breath was coming faster. Evelyn was confused and I. "What condition exactly?" I asked, leaning forward. The one you invented to make me look incompetent. The one you used to convince Carter I was thriving while I was skipping heart medication to afford groceries. Her hands trembled on the table. I can pay it back. This isn't about money anymore, Carter said coldly. It's about elder abuse, fraud, mail tampering, and every single person you lied to is going to hear the truth from us. I reached into my envelope and fanned out the letters from neighbors, cousins, old friends, all ready to see for themselves how mentally gone I was supposed to be. They'll be here this weekend. I imagine they'll be very interested in meeting the woman who kept them away. For the first time, Vanessa's mask truly slipped. I saw the panic in her eyes, the realization that there was no way out of this room without losing everything. And I couldn't help thinking, this was the first time in 2 years that I finally felt free. For a moment, the only sound in that glass-walled conference room was the faint hum of the air conditioner. Vanessa sat frozen, her fingers clenched so tightly around her pen that her knuckles had gone white. Carter leaned forward, his voice low but deliberate. Vanessa, you spent 2 years crafting this fantasy, the doting stepdaughter-in-law caring for her helpless, declining grandmother. You took control of her narrative, her finances, her relationships. And you stole more than money. You stole her life. She shook her head, her lips parting in a desperate half-smile. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. I cut in, my tone calm and steady. You cut me off from my friends. You told lies to my family. You staged photos to make it look like I was cared for, while I was shivering in my apartment with no heat. You didn't just rob me of money, you robbed me of dignity. Vanessa's eyes darted to the door, as though she could will herself out of the room. Carter didn't give her the chance. He slid the final piece of paper across the table, a printed report she had filed with Adult Protective Services, painting me as malnourished, confused, and hostile toward assistance. Do you understand, Carter said, that this is evidence you were preparing to have her declared mentally unfit? That you were going to put her in a facility, sell her assets, and keep the profits? Because we do, and so will the police. Her breathing quickened. We don't have to involve them. I can return the money. All of it. I folded my hands on the table, meeting her eyes. No, Vanessa. We're not asking. We're telling you. This will be reported. Every person you lied to will know the truth. And you will face the consequences. She swallowed hard, the confidence draining out of her like water through a sieve. There was nothing left for her to say. Every word would only add to the case we'd built. Carter gathered the papers into a neat stack, his movements crisp. This meeting is over. You'll be hearing from our attorney and the district attorney. Vanessa stood on shaky legs, clutching her portfolio like a shield. She looked at me one last time, but I wasn't the frail, confused woman she'd invented. I was the woman who'd just taken back her life. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. When the conference room door closed behind Vanessa, I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For 2 years, my life had been shrinking. My world limited to 4 walls, a few pill bottles, and the occasional knock at the door that always seemed to come from her. Now, with one meeting, those walls had cracked wide open. Carter slid the evidence folder into his briefcase like it was a loaded weapon. Grandma, he said, this isn't just about winning against her. This is about making sure no one ever does this to you, or anyone else again. That weekend, my apartment was filled with voices I hadn't heard in years. Claire brought her famous peach cobbler. Margaret called me 3 times before she even boarded her flight. Cousin Hank showed up at my door with a hug so fierce it almost knocked me over. Each of them had their own story about the lies Vanessa told, and each one hugged me like they were afraid I might disappear again. I noticed something as the hours passed. The sound of laughter felt different now. Warmer, louder, more mine. For too long, Vanessa had made me believe I was fragile, a burden, a problem to be managed. But looking around that room, surrounded by people who knew the truth, I realized I hadn't lost my strength at all. She'd just been hiding it from me. The legal process would take time. There would be statements to give, hearings to attend, paperwork to slog through. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Carter was at my side. My friends were back in my corner, and the truth was no longer a secret locked behind Vanessa's smirk. She had underestimated me, and in the end, that was her undoing. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever had someone twist your reality, take advantage of your trust, or try to control your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might give someone else the courage to speak up. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, or if you just want to make sure stories like mine get heard, please click like, share it with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We've got more true stories, and trust me, some will shock you even more than this one. Thank you for listening, and for reminding me that no one's voice is too small to be heard.